Thank you, Joe. Big hand for Joe. Well, welcome. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking to be the first speaker up, but here I am. And today I want to talk to you about, I kind of want to set the tone for the conference. And I'm going to talk about something that not everyone really completely understands what it means, but I hope that you'll join me in understanding it and actually practicing it. And that's about empathy. I truly believe that if we had more empathy for one another, we, together, could change the world. And when I talk about it in the context of work and in our personal lives, and I'm going to talk about it in the context of leadership. And when you're trying to promote something like this, especially in corporations, people want to know, well, is there any bottom line to this? So I was like, okay, I built lots of ROI models in my time, so I thought, what if I came up with a concept, the economics of empathy? So I'll show you a little bit about how that works. And of course, the other piece is AI. So there's a lot of fear, right? People are worried that AI is going to take your job. And I want to share my philosophy about that. So I think there's a way to do AI. The truth is that it's here. The developers have been working on it for 25, well, it depends on where you start counting, right? Since the beginning of time, right? We've been working on technology. But it's here, right? And so we have a choice. We have a choice about how we shape that. And so that's what I want to talk about today. All right. So before we start to talk about technology, the first thing that I want to do is I want to talk about the customer and the employee experience. Because at the end of the day, that's what AI is going to affect. So press 1 for, press 2 for, press 64 for, right? We're still calling the call center. Phones didn't go away, which is really fascinating. So whether you're trying to reach someone by phone or chat or email, a lot of times it can make us feel like this. You're like, can this still be happening? But it is. And the blind spot for a lot of companies is that they think they're just going to find more customers. But customers are like, no, you made me so mad. I'm going to tell all my friends and family, never mind. Here's some research. So I love research because it helps validate some of the points, some of the feelings that we have. 80% of executives, when you poll them, believe that they provide great experiences. However, when you ask customers, only 8% agree. And that gap, it's maddening. For someone who's spent their whole life working in this industry, it's very, very fascinating. So I mean, research, what I found was we have programmed our agents and our bots to respond in ways that are not sincere. And so I came up with this theory called the sympathy scripts. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And so it's when you call or text or chat and someone says, oh, I'm so sorry that's happening to you. I know what a disappointing experience this is. I would be disappointed too. Those kind of responses, what we find in the research, and I'll show you a couple of case studies, it just makes customers feel like you're not really listening. You don't see them, you don't hear them, and they're not acknowledged. And it makes them feel like they don't really matter. So now, let's look at the world's employees. According to McKinsey, 4% are super engaged, 10% extremely disengaged, and the rest, it ranges in value. So I really love cartoons because they add humor to what we already know is so. This one says, before we start this round of brainstorming, I'd just like to remind you that all the ideas in the room that are not mine will be rejected. So that's classic NIH, not invented here. So I don't know about you, but I've been in situations where, we're sitting around a table and the boss says, hey, how about some just suggestions? And you're like, oh my God, I have this great idea. I'm so excited to share it. So you share it, and right away they shoot it down. You're like, well, why did I share? That didn't feel very good. Or Raise your hand if you've ever had this happen to you. You share it, and then they pretend like it's their idea. Has that ever happened? Yes. Yes, it's like, I just said that. And that's what leads to us feeling like this. Let's look at the research. Gallup says 77% of the world's population at work is doing something called quiet quitting, which means that we show up, but we really don't show up. So when a company spends $1 on salaries, they're really getting 23 cents of value. So if you're a company, I hope you're listening, right? Because this is a global phenomenon. 50% of the world's employees have one foot out the door, which means that they're interviewing. They're not paying attention to your job or the tasks or the things that you've asked them to do. They're interviewing. They're looking for that next opportunity. They're looking for a company where they feel like they can belong. What's fascinating, though, is that 77%, they know what they want changed. But our company's really listening. And the blind spot is that we're just going to be able to find more employees. But we're all sitting back laughing, going, ha, 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 the joke's on you. So how big is the problem? The research by Gallup and others say for the global economy, it's about an $8.8 trillion problem. That's pretty big. And as a leader in your organization, if you're running a company or you're the leader of, let's say, a medium-sized S&P company, employee disengagement and attrition could lead to $228 to $355 million lost in productivity a year. So these feelings that we have of not feeling seen or acknowledged or heard cost companies money. Does it make sense? No, but it's where we are right now. So I hope I haven't depressed you. I hope maybe that there's some resonance, right, for you about where you work and how you feel as an employee and as a person. And so what I see, and part of, I think, my job as a empathy whisperer, is to point out what's happening and then create a guidepost to figure out how can we as individuals and leaders change that. So what I see is that businesses are really struggling. Customers and employees, they feel invisible. It seems like the very foundation of how we do business has been shaken. So how did we get here? Well, one of my theories is this. During the pandemic, we had a lot of quiet time, and it created a cause for pause. And in that time of self-reflection, we all asked ourselves very deep questions about what we wanted for our lives and what we thought about work. The result is that we as individuals and as a workforce and customers, we've changed dramatically. The question is, for leaders, is do we really understand that? And do we know what to do next? So what about blind spots, right? It's an interesting concept. And so a lot of times I'll talk about these things, and I think about it as an idea that you put on a shelf in someone's brain, and if there's no reference point, it falls off. Blind spots, when you're going 60 miles an hour, can put a lot at risk. But what if? What if you could see something that you couldn't see before? Would that be of value to you? So as I work with leaders in many different companies, and I'll show you a couple of case studies today, they say, okay, Nat, you painted the picture, we get it. It's not working. So what can we do? What can we do differently? Well, one of the first things I see is that companies are not using empathy as a business strategy. The reason that's important is because when the culture is void of empathy, leaders miss the perspective of the very people, you and I, employees and customers, that know what's not working, Isn't that crazy they don't ask us? When they don't ask us, when they don't talk to us, when they really don't look at the user research, this is what leads to blind spots, because they are not getting to the root cause of the issue. And as user experience designers, we see it every single day. We see what's frustrating. We see the friction, whether it's in our work or whether it's in the customer's experience. And that feedback is the canary in the coal mine. It's the golden insights that are required for competitive differentiation. So step one is use empathy as a business strategy. So you might be saying, what the heck is that? So I'll talk a little bit about that. What's fascinating is the companies that I've worked with that have adopted this, their leaders were able to take ordinary or even frustrating situations and turn them into brand galvanizing experiences. And I know that's what you guys are experts in. Those experiences entice customers to return and employees to be proud of where they work, to become motivated, productive, and innovative. So what if we were actually to look at the culture and change it? Now, you may not work for a leader who's able to do this, but you can change that in the way that you lead. And you may not feel like your voice matters, but I can tell you that every single person in this room, and shout out to the virtual audience, you all make a difference. What if we enticed customers and employees to become fans and brand ambassadors? All right, so what else can we do differently? First step is empathy as a business strategy. The second part is get that it has bottom line economic impact. And because I often talk to CFOs and other executives, they want to know, okay, sounds nice, right? I can tell that they're kind of placating me. They're like, well, if you think this is really going to work, I want to see the bottom line. So I'm like, okay, I'll play your game. I'll show you what works and why. So put your CEO or CFO hat on and answer me this. Does it make sense in customer acquisition that we spend 20 to 50% of revenue on advertising and marketing to acquire customers, and then we reduce the spending in customer service? I don't know, call me crazy. It doesn't make any sense to me, it never has. So why would you drive those very expensively acquired customers to competitors with bad experiences? Customers are voting with their feet and their mouse. They're saying, we don't like this anymore, please stop. Customer acquisition, customer service. It seems to me that we've been doing the same thing and expecting different results, and it's not working. In fact, Einstein said that was the definition of insanity. All right, so here's some of the pieces of the economic model. Let's look at two of the most important assets that we have: employees and customers. Without employees, guess what? There's no one to do the work. That's why you guys matter. And yes, I know AI is coming and there's lots of ways that it's going to change the way that we work, but I don't believe that it means that humans won't have a part in that, for this very reason. And without customers, which are also people, there's no one to buy these products and services. There has to be a marketplace. Otherwise, all these tech vendors that are creating AI, right? If there's no one to consume it, they can't make any money. The humans don't go away in this model. They matter. What's fascinating is that when I talk to CFOs and I look at the general accounting principles, the experiences of customers and employees are not on the P&L. but I'm aiming to change that. And if you're a CFO or in finance, please come see me because I want to work with you. Okay, case study, real life. I was working with a food service delivery company, and their customers, all the feedback, we looked at the user research, we looked at the customer feedback, and they said, you know what? You guys are robotic, and sometimes you're even inhumane. This is a horrible experience. And what that does is it drives them to another delivery service mechanism. So I began working with the executives, and I helped them see how using empathy could transform their business. Here's what I found really fascinating. We worked with 15,000 customer service agents in 8 BPOs, 11 countries, and 37 sites. So sometimes when people bring me in, it's just like a small microcosm, right? It's one company, one set of customers. This was global. Didn't matter the culture, didn't matter the language, didn't matter the country. Empathy works for everyone because it's a basic human need to be seen and heard and acknowledged. So we used masterminds, focus groups, training, workshops, constant feedback and iteration based on the user experience from both customers and employees. And in 1 year, we were able to change a 70-year-old paradigm for the first time in history. 70 marks the number of years that contact centers have been around. And we changed the way that this big company was able to interface with their customers and their employees. Is it perfect? No. Do we have more work to do? Yes. But we started. The results. Using the economics of empathy, we reduced the average handle time by 50%. And we did not use any technology. We reduced agent attrition, we increased CSAT, we saved hundreds of millions of dollars in cost, and we generated new revenue. Why? Because we created experiences that were based on the customer and the employee's point of view. Know what you do makes a difference. So I created this concept, and I'll show you a little bit about how we did this. So when a company contacts a company, or customers contact a company, and they say, hey, you forgot my fries, what are they really saying? Help! My house is on fire. Is the house really on fire? No, but in that moment, that's how you feel. So let's say you're a mom, and you have 5 kids, and you just got home from work, and you ordered food, and now you have hungry kids that are cranky and screaming and yelling, and you have half an order. That's really frustrating. Her house is on fire. So this house is on fire theory, I said, okay, let's look at this, and let's put yourself in the customer's shoes. Would you rather hear A, traditional sympathy scripts? Oh, I'm so sorry that's happening to you. That must be really frustrating. I understand this is a disappointing situation, but please don't worry, I'm here to help you. As a customer, would you rather hear this? Or, I'll get the hose. It's very simple. So raise your hand. Would you rather see A, or would you rather see B? B. B wins, right? Because you feel seen and heard. And the thing that's most frustrating to you in that moment is going to get answered. Okay, so let's take a look at what empathy actually is. It's often confused with sympathy, but it's not the same. The distinction is severalfold. One is that sympathy often starts with an apology. And when I talk about empathy, I'm not talking about creating kumbaya factories or pizza parties or being overly nice. Sympathy is part of our cultural gut reaction. It's natural. Someone expresses something, it's a human response to a concern. But the problem in customer service when we create our scripts this way, instead of being genuine, what the research shows is that customers feel that the sympathy scripts aren't authentic and they don't solve the problem. And when we talked to the employees, and this was really interesting, was they said they feel frustrated too. And I said, so tell me more about that. And they said, you know, by the time a problem gets to my desk, whether I'm a chat agent or customer service agent on the phone or email, I had nothing to do with all the things that led up to them contacting the company. So it's really not my fault, so I feel kind of weird apologizing. It doesn't feel sincere when I say these things. And so when we gave them a different way to respond, they're like, phew, this feels so much better. I got into this job, they tell me, because I really wanted to help people. So it's really, really fascinating that both from the customer and the employee's point of view, it made them feel better. So empathy. It is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but it doesn't stop there. It's the ability to see the world through someone else's eyes and take action from that point of view. And when you consider the customer and the employee's point of view, it changes the decisions and choices that you as a leader make. It's an ask versus tell type leadership. Empathy is not about us as leaders. It's not about our perspective, and it can be really easy, like as a leader, because you think you're supposed to know. It's a very unique leadership skill because it requires the use of other people's opinions. It's not just a reply, it's action. So that not invented here stuff, it's about how we behave. It's how we acknowledge others. Leading with empathy means that you have the cognitive adaptability to those around you, to their ideas, their feedback, and their concerns. And you make it psychologically safe for people to express diverse opinions, especially when they're different from the status quo. Researchers across the board show that diversity of opinion leads to greater economic benefit because you get deeper insights, and those insights lead to less blind spots, which in turn gives you the financial results. So what if you actually put the focus on employees? Well, then that company becomes the employer of choice, who can retain top talent, who are innovative and motivated and productive. So would you rather work for company A, who's not doing any of this, or company B, who is? Company B. And that thing called quiet quitting, it doesn't happen anymore, right? We've solved the problem. And those employees, you could provide the products and services to entice repeat buyers, which leads to higher customer and employee lifetime value, which gives you the financial results that you're looking for. Not many companies operate like this, but if I have anything to do with it, I'm out there to change the world, and I hope that you'll join me. Okay, another case study. Working with this company, diaper bag, we looked at the customer feedback, and they're like, Dr. Nat, we poured through all the research, and it says that we're fantastic, right? All the right compartments, zipper works well, place for the bottle, the keys. So I said, okay, so let's go back to the model. The economics of empathy says there are two main components. One is customers and audience. What's the second one? Yes, employees, right? This is not difficult math. So what was fascinating is when we went and we actually got the research, the user experience of our employees, the guys said, we love the backpack, but it doesn't reflect who we are. So guess what we did? Now, every single time I give this talk, I get a chuckle. And it's fascinating. This is so simple, but it worked. Why? Because we were empathetic, because we took the feedback of one of the two main components. And here's a review. Freaking awesome. Freaking awesome. Wouldn't you want all your customers and all your employees to feel this way? All right, so what else can we do differently? Step 3, AI and empathy. So they may not seem like they fit together, at least not right now, but to me, they're kind of like peanut butter and chocolate. Once you have them together, you want more. Since the beginning of time, we have been at the effect of exponential change in technology, a little history lesson, and we are here now in the 5th industrial revolution, which means that there's the possibility, and I'm going to emphasize the word possibility, for deep, multi-level collaboration between people, machines, and awareness. Possibility is up to you and I. We control this. We control the narrative, and we control what happens with the technology. It is up to us, each and every single person. So with any technology, you can kind of see this Gartner hype curve. So in the beginning, there's some innovation, the technology advances, it matures, and then we get the hype, right? And that's where we are right now. And that's part of why it feels so scary, is because we don't know what we don't know. What's fascinating is that it always drops off. And this is true for every technology, ERP, CRM, cloud, digital, and now generative. The reason for the dip is because it can take time for organizations to be ready to change. Part of what's really important is some sort of organizational change program with education and training. You need to help your employees figure out how to do this. That means you need to map the workflow of every single employee, which is where you guys come in, is that user experience for the employee. And then you want to look at the customer experience and map that. And what I'm going to add to that is empathy is going to be key. That feedback from the users is really important. I believe that AI is just another building block. Often technology gets developed and becomes an application in search of a purpose. And if we look at any new technology, the first implementations didn't meet the outcomes. And while there can be substantial benefits to customers and employees, which means businesses, starting with the tech means that you're going to have trouble. It starts with the user experience. It begins with a few people who have great vision to be able to help the organization see how they're going to change. And it takes collaboration and hard work to map that customer and employee journey and determine what are we going to change and why. Seems like common sense to me, but what I find when I work with companies is that it's not so common. But if we combine collaborative, mindful, and creative planning, we can build together something amazing. And it takes everyone's voice. Okay, so here comes the AI part. And what I'm going to stress is that when we put AI and empathy as a business strategy together, what that means is that we're using technology to become even more customer and employee-centric at scale. Better together. So let's look at these technologies. The first one is RPA. It's not really IA, but it's the bots that automate digital tasks. You may have used it in your personal life to check an account balance, scan a receipt for an expense report, or scan a check. In corporate lives, we've used this for payroll processing, onboarding new employees, or sorting incoming customer service requests. Predictive AI predicts future events based on historical data. If you like this, you're going to like that. So Amazon or Netflix recommendations, or wearables. In our corporate lives, we've used this, we've created experiences to provide customer service agents the next best action, or help a salesperson analyze and score leads. Conversational AI facilitates the communication between humans and machines, so a chatbot or an SMS. Could be Alexa, Siri, a voice-powered assistant. Sephora, for example, uses a virtual assistant for customers to help them find products and book appointments and get makeup tips. And when customers use that, the experience is so great, the customers are retained at 80%. That's the kind of experience that we need to look at when we're designing. Okay, generative. Generative is about taking input and creating and generating new responses without predefined scripts. So in our personal lives, you might have experimented with Perplexity or OpenAI or Bard or Google, and I highly recommend that you do this. I'm not a programmer. I do have a PhD in engineering, but I'm not a programmer, right, or developer. When I started playing with this, and I actually made myself go back to school, which I really didn't want to do, right? But the truth is, to be successful, you always have to be learning. What I found was experiencing one of these user interfaces, and I think this is what was brilliant about what OpenAI did, was it gave you a visceral experience of the power of a large language model without having to be a programmer or a developer. So it's one of the most historic user experiences ever. You could use it to teach yourself how to negotiate, plan a trip. The pictures that you see, the really pretty pictures, I can't draw. So I put in a prompt into ChatGPT and I described the technology and I said, please draw me a picture. So the pictures that you see were developed and created in 4 seconds. Okay, corporate uses. If you're thinking about using a large language model, you want to use something that's called a walled garden. You do not want to put your data into an open platform, because then everybody has it. So just like in cloud, you want a private instance. So let's look at some of those applications. Let's say you're in engineering, and you have a bug in your code. You can put that in, and using a plugin, at least now, it could help you fix that. Marketing. So let's say that you put in your competitive differentiation, your unique selling proposition, your products, your services, all that information, and now you can say, hey, write me a blog post. And it may not be the one that you use at the end of the day, but it's better than staring at a blank page, and it does save you time. Let's say you're in finance, and your jam is numbers. It's not writing a narrative. You can take your F1 document, and it will create a description, a narrative for you. HR. How many of us have questions at the end of the day where we'd really like to understand our benefits? What if in HR we could create a chatbot that could actually answer them? It would be fantastic. All right, last case study, an example of the combination of AI and empathy. And this is the way that I believe that AI should be implemented. So in January 2023, yep, a year ago, this company had the foresight. And they wanted to implement AI, but they knew if employees felt like it was a program or a development to take the opportunity to lay off people, employees would not get on board. Or if they got on board, they'd use it as an education experience to learn, and then they'd get the heck out of there. So they started their strategy with no layoffs. And they asked employees, where's the friction in your work? The second thing that they did was they interviewed customers and they looked at all the user experience data. And they took all that information and they figured out, how are we going to use AI to transform the employees' functional roles and customer service? A year later, their results, they reduced the employee friction points, giving employees 15 to 50% more time. Now, they could have easily said, great, we're just going to cut headcount. But instead, they did something extraordinary. They took that extra time, and they said to the employees, we got all that amazing feedback from customers about what they want and what they need. Let's take that and create those products and services that we've never had time. We've been dreaming about, but we don't have time for it. The strategy set them a year ahead of their competitors. So if you're listening to this and you feel a little bit of FOMO, I know when I worked with this company, I was like, wow. First of all, I was like, can this really work? And second of all, when I saw the results, I'm like, this is astonishing. And I want to share this story with the world. Okay, prompt engineering. This is a little cheat sheet for you. How do you use it, right? So prompt engineering is just really about asking questions. So the better you are, and you guys, I think, are great because you're used to asking these kinds of questions. Let's say you had a virtual assistant or an assistant. How would you ask them to do something to get the result that you wanted? So prompt engineering is about asking the right questions. So let's say you want to create some marketing and sales materials and you want to know who's my ideal client. So you'd put in a prompt, hi, I'm an online business coach and I teach busy dads starting a new online business how to leverage virtual training programs to grow their business. Can you give me the psychographics and demographics? ChatGPT can pump that out for you. The next thing is, okay, so I know who my client is, but what about their ideal pain points? And the cheat here that I want to share with you is to ask both the obvious and the non-obvious answers. The difference is the obvious ones are like time management, but when you really get the psychology of that customer, it's things like overcoming imposter syndrome. Then you want to ask for visceral prompts. And the difference that you see there is time management turns into the juggling act. And the last one is you want to ask ChatGPT, what about their outcomes? And what you see are business outcomes as well as personal outcomes. So that's just kind of a way to think about how you use these chatbots, and I really encourage you to start playing. So now, with this kind of information, you really have the makings of a great campaign, and you can begin the storytelling process. And I will share my slides in case you're taking pictures. I really appreciate that. It makes me feel really good that maybe I'm saying something that matters and it's a contribution. So, to kind of wrap this up, where do I see the next wave of innovation? I think we need to integrate all of these. And these are the pictures that Dolly helped me create. I believe that we can imbue our technology with our hopes and dreams. We just have to be really clear about what we're optimizing for and why. And that's where you guys come in. So if I've said anything today, if you're interested in being an empathy practitioner, know that it's a different kind of leadership. You may never have experienced it. But if it appeals to you, then I would like to encourage you to become this, because it inspires followers and new ways to get things done. People are like, okay, Dr. Nat, that's great. How do I begin? So step one is actively listen. And that means don't listen so that you're going to figure out the next sentence you want to say, right? We all do it. It's hard to stop it, but suggest just trying. And then say, tell me more. And there's a rule in programming that says that if you ask why or say, tell me more, 5 or 10 or 20 times, that's when you really get to the root cause and you truly understand that other person's perspective. And the last step is, don't forget what they told you. Integrate it back into your decisions. So I want to thank you for being a great audience. I hope you have a fantastic conference. Big shout out to Joe. He's been great to work with. It's been a great user experience. And if you want information about my upcoming book, The Economics of Empathy, you can scan this. And if you want the information on the AI content, go ahead and scan that. And thank you very much. It looks like we're not done until 10, so it looks like we have a couple minutes for questions if anybody has a question. Yes.
One of the challenges that I often see inside organizations of doing any kind of UX, CX work, CX, EX work, is working across silos. So you can get a particular leader in one area of the business to sort of be on board with this, but being able to have impact, means working across silos. What are your recommendations for how to do that, how to move across the business, not just working in a small space?
So oftentimes what I find is that you have to find that pocket of success and show other people that there is a reason to do things differently. I was talking before the conference to Mohit, who's speaking, I think, around 1 today, and he came up with this really cool concept called experience deficit. So just like financial deficit, experience deficit. So let's say one part of your organization has a great experience, but they really all need to be connected and they all need to be different. So you can talk about experience deficit, because what happens is when you start advertising, marketing, sales, customer service, that whole chain needs to change. And so do all the back-end systems, right? Because what happens is when they don't work collaboratively together, then that's when the call center gets flooded with chats and emails and calls. Will you be able to affect it in the company you're at? Maybe or maybe not. That's kind of my mission, is to help leaders see this and to do things differently. Any other questions? Yes?
Empathy as a business strategy. So how do you avoid having empathy become as formulaic and insincere as the sympathy replaces?
Good question. So the question was, how do we employ empathy as a business strategy without it coming kind of rote and just going back to that reflexive motion of just doing the things that we've always done? And I think that part of that is that we ourselves as leaders need to change our behavior, and then we need to take time. I think one of the fascinating things that Amazon has done is that they always leave an empty chair for the customer at the table. And so practicing things like that, creating a different user experience, being the leader of empathy in your behavior, in the way that you organize meetings, in the way that you ask other people for feedback. We can't change everybody. I'd like to think that we could, and I've been trying my whole career to do that. What I found is that I can only change me. And in changing me, that circles and reflects to other people. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes?
I'm wondering if you've had thoughts about potential tension between AI and empathy in businesses. For instance, I'm imagining businesses wanting to use a Gen AI chatbot like ChatGPT as a replacement for talking to customers. You can talk to this Gen AI tool, and it will be able to sort of emulate a conversation with a customer. I'm wondering if that's something you've thought about, any suggestions around that?
So the question was about how will Gen AI transform the customer experience? And will we just give all our experiences to Gen AI or a Gen AI-based chatbot? If you think about experiences now and you look at the gap between executives and customers, it's a big gap, right? 78%. I think that while predictive and conversational AI have helped, and generative will take us to the next level, it's really about designing that experience so that the self-service actually works. And so up until now, self-service has been, they said, I remember when I was a Forrester analyst and they said, oh, right, we're going to come out with self-service and nobody's ever going to contact the company again. It didn't happen. I think it also depends on how complicated the service request is. So if it's an airline, it's retail, it's finance, I don't know that there's ever going to be a day where specific applications are not going to require a human being. I could be wrong, but I do believe that humans have a very important part to play in this process. Would it be great to get some of those simple requests answered, right? And that we trust, like, I don't know about you, but I'm shopping or asking a question, I get an answer back from a chatbot. Half the time, or even more than half the time, I'll call the company anyways, because guess what? I don't trust what the chatbot told me. So now we have a fear of what we've been told because it's been wrong. So I think in the future, self-service is great. It's good for certain applications. I don't think it's good for everything. The fear I have, and I love that you brought up this question, is that executives will jump to, we don't need humans. I don't believe that to be true. And to me, that's common sense. Thank you. Any other questions? We have a couple minutes left. Yes?
Yeah, I have a question. So one of the first things you shared those case studies that were really interesting. One question that came to my mind was, have you ever been in an example where during these case studies, you had a difference in what the employee thought was the best path forward versus the customers? And that's how you approach that difference?
So the question was, is there ever a difference in these projects about what the customers and the employees think about the experience? Absolutely, right? And so once you collect the user data, the user experience data, then you want to look at what that difference is and then go back and ask more questions. So when you keep asking questions and keep asking questions, a lot of times you'll find that there's a common denominator about why. And when you get to that, then you solve it for both people. And that's where the iteration comes in. It's not just like a formula that we'll just slap this on and it solves it. It is really being curious and inquisitive. Okay, one more last question if we have it. Yes.
Employees feel like it's safe to express a range of opinions and that it's healthy or economically for a company to accept a diverse or contradictory range of opinions. My question is, like, but tactically, how do you accomplish that? What are some exercises that you put leadership through? Like, I'm curious, how do you legitimately get leadership to buy into that as opposed to just like, yeah, sure, we have that, and then just keep on doing what they're doing.
So the question was about how do we transform leadership to see that diverse opinions really matter. Part of it is presenting the data, right? So they like data points. And part of it is having an experiential experience for them. So sometimes we'll do role plays, and we'll have someone express an opinion, and we'll cut them off. It's kind of fun. And have them feel that visceral, somatic sense of what that feels like to be cut off or to have someone take ownership of their idea. So it's through those felt experiences that they begin to feel. And we also talk about the shadow self. We talk about what led to them. So the shadow work is really fascinating because a lot of times when we were kids, what happens is we have an experience, feels really yucky, we form a wall, and we make decisions. And then as we grow up, that need to be control, that need to be the smartest person in that room. That's how that gets reflected. So we look at some of those because those may be some of the underlying reasons why people act the way that they act. So sometimes it's getting in touch with those things and just asking them, what kind of culture do you want to create? And there are going to be lots of leaders who are not interested in this conversation. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in people who really want to grow and learn. And we have to make those choices individually about where we work, where we play, and who we're connected to. With that, I'm going to wrap up. Thanks, guys, very much.